Hello,
Salutations.
and welcome to Gilded Goss. It's our first episode. Thanks for joining us. You made it here. Let's hang out for a bit.
Come on in, sit down by the fire.
Gilded Goss is the podcast that dives into the American Gilded Age. We're here to talk about the sordid characters, scandals, true crime, and the macabre tales from the era. Basically, if it went down in the Gilded Age, we're here to tell you about it. I'm Diana Palmer. Joining me today is my co-host, Justin Palmer.
Hello.
He's also my husband.
Very much your husband.
Very my husband. So first things first, what qualifies us to research and discuss such historical topics? Well, nothing really aside from a hearty interest and appreciation. We're no historians or experts in any way, really.
I take issue with that. I'm an expert in many ways, but perhaps one of them is not a historical expert.
You know, when you're watching The Gilded Age on HBO or other media based on a true story and you want to get in there and find out what really went down, we're here to help. Today we're covering New York's Mystic Rose, Mrs. Caroline Astor, and her lesser-known scandals. And after that, we'll tell you about a murderous parrot.
I'm excited about that. The murderous parrot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited about the whole thing, but on my scale of importance, murderous parrot is really up there.
Yeah, we'll get there. I know you're here for that hot 1800s goss.
I'll never dish the goss.
But first, we must cover some basics. Our sources for this episode are Wikipedia and the Factinate article, Gilded Facts About Caroline Astor, New York's Mystic Rose by Nancy Mason, and the 1899 New York Times article, Parrot Was a Gas Friend, author unknown. So, the Gilded Age ranges from about the late 1800s to a little into the 1900s, about 1865 to 1904. It is a time marked by opulence, materialism, and blatant political corruption. An absurd amount of wealth was being thrown around by the upper class.
Not going to grandstand too much, but that's all happening right now. So I just want to say, not too different.
There are some parallels, yes.
Yeah.
Think extravagant houses, lavish parties, the women draped in jewels. The Civil War had just ended, and people were like, enough with the doom and gloom. Let's put on 12 layers of dresses and tall hats and let's party.
I shot my brother last week, and now I want to party.
But all that glittered was not always gold. Sometimes it was a hunk of wood with some gold paint slapped on top of it. And this age of luxury and excess was afforded by just a handful of entrepreneurs who were known as captains of industry or robber barons, whose riches grew from monopolies in the steel, petroleum, and transportation industries.
So a lot of jelly is changing hands at this time, and a lot of people are making a lot of money off of jelly.
Yeah, jelly barons. Some of these notable figures are depicted in HBO's series, The Gilded Age, and will be subjects of episodes to come. So, let's go to New York City in the Gilded Age, at least for the upper class. There's the steady crunch of horse hooves on gravel roads, and the horses pull carriages adorned with fine upholstery.
I was going to try to do some Foley work, but I don't think I can make horse crunching gravel sounds, but I'll work on it.
Okay, yeah, next time. Gorgeous brownstones flank the streets, tall with their brick dark and moody, with bay windows and ornate patterns carved around the door frames. Interspersed were grand buildings, some reaching up to 18 to 29 stories high and equally as ornate. This was also the time that we see the first skyscrapers.
Cool.
Ladies bedecked in extravagant clothing made from silk, velvet, and fur stroll arm in arm along the tree-lined perimeter of Central Park. So, are you there?
Yeah, I mean, I go there on the regular.
You're in New York City right now.
Mm-hmm.
Gilded Age. Yeah, I did my job. This was a time when there was a rigid code of etiquette, and image meant everything. And Caroline Astor ruled what was known as high society.
She ruled with an iron fist.
She did.
Floggings, cat o' nine tails.
Not that we know of. No.
Those Iron Maidens, and you're getting in it. And she told you to do it, and you have to, because she's a monarch.
No, not really.
Okay.
The Gilded Age HBO series shows us the feud between Caroline Astor and Alva Vanderbilt, portrayed as Bertha Russell on the show, in painstaking detail. But her feud with Alva Vanderbilt wasn't the only scandal in the charmed yet tumultuous life of Caroline Schermerhorn Astor. Caroline Schermerhorn was born on September 22nd, 1830, in New York, making her a true born and bred Knickerbocker. She was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. She was well educated, well traveled, and ambitious. She married William Backhouse Astor II in 1853, whose family made their wealth in the fur trade and by owning a lot of New York real estate.
The fur trade, it's beavers. They're selling
Beavers.
beaver hide,
Yep.
and that's how they made their money.
Yeah. She actually married down. Her family had far more clout, social clout, than the Astors. But she was attracted to the Astor family wealth, and he benefited from her social connections. So it was a marriage of convenience for both of them.
Who isn't attracted to wealth?
She was the queen bee and gatekeeper of New York society. She hosted lavish parties, exquisite teas, and swanky receptions at her home, inviting only those she deemed to be of high social standing. She played favorites, and she loved excluding people.
She sounds pretty great.
Yeah, great.
I like her attitude.
In fact, she and Ward McAllister, her right-hand man, had a list known as the 400. It was a list of the best of New York society, and being excluded was a huge burn. And notably missing from Caroline's parties were Catholics, Jews, actors, and other creative types.
It sounds like really boring parties.
Yeah. Legend has it that people were obsessed with her scent. Like, she had a sweet odor of like lavender and rose that left guests clamoring for a whiff. And it was Ward McAllister who started calling her the Mystic Rose due to her, quote, uncanny ability to draw people together and rule over moments of magical luxury. But I like to think he just had his nose like firmly buried in her elbows or something.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like he did use the word magical, so maybe her smells were tinctures from the cauldron, and she was doing magic to get people to hang around her.
Absolutely. Sounds great, right? She's married into wealth. She's popular. She throws all the parties. She's basically American aristocracy. But again, all that glitters
gold on the shooting star. Right? Oh,
it's not.
I have to stop. We'll get some sort of copyright strike.
Contrary to her appearances, her marriage to William was not a happy one. After the birth of their children, he traveled a lot. He spent a lot of time in Europe and on his yacht, and he merely tolerated her presence, which left her desperate for attention.
I feel like that was really common for the time.
Yeah. And it could explain her intense need for the external validation of others. He valued peace and quiet, so the rare times he was at home, he delighted in breaking up the parties she hosted. The big old party pooper would burst in and send the orchestra home and order the kids to bed. He was the worst. Ever the schemer, she got around his disruptive arrivals by devising ways to keep him out at his clubs late into the night.
I'm still wondering how she did that. Like, she paid people to talk to him. She had somebody slip something in his drink, get him more messed up than he thought, and then he's like, can't come home yet. Too messed up.
I think it was just like the regular booze and burlesque dancers. Meanwhile, a family feud was brewing close to home. Caroline didn't get along with the Astor family, and she especially didn't get along with her husband's older brother, John Jacob Astor III, and his wife, Charlotte Augusta Gibbs, known as Augusta, and we'll be calling her Augusta from here on out. And things started to get messy. Caroline built a stunning and fashionable new brownstone in the heart of the Upper East Side. The only problem, her brother-in-law and his wife were now her neighbors. Their brownstones separated by only a garden, which the brothers loved, the wives not so much. She had some things in common with her sister-in-law. They both came from well-connected families and high standing. They were both well-educated, but that is where the similarities end.
Because Augusta was a ghost.
Not yet. Unlike Caroline, Augusta loved to spend her time with writers, painters, actors, fun people.
Yeah.
She too would entertain up to 200 guests in her ballroom, dripping in jewels. But her main focus was on charities. And she was heavily involved in the Children's Aid Society.
I wonder how she made her jewels drip.
This was in stark contrast to the superficial and snobbish Caroline Astor. Augusta actually gave very little thought to the rivalry with Caroline, while Caroline admonished her for mingling with those she viewed as beneath them, and she sneered at her commitment to charity.
Jeez.
Yeah. Tensions flared until the unexpected happens. The unthinkable happens.
Augusta reveals herself to be a ghost.
Yes.
Wow.
In 1882, Augusta died suddenly at the age of 62. No one was expecting it. Caroline dutifully played her part in the mourning of her family member, but she took a chilling pleasure in the tragedy. Because with Augusta's death, an opportunity arose.
I mean, she died mysteriously. She has a feud with her neighbor, who is also a family member. And probably she ate dinner at the Astor house the night she died. And who put poison in her drink? I'm calling it right now. Caroline Astor murdered her. There's no evidence to support that theory.
Allegedly.
But I think it's true.
Being the wife of the eldest Astor brother, Augusta held the revered title of Mrs. Astor, while Caroline was simply known as Mrs. William Astor.
Oh, God. That's terrible.
The Mrs. Astor moniker was now up for grabs, and Caroline's pursuit of the coveted title nearly tore the Astor family apart. Caroline was all ready to take her rightful place in society as the Mrs. Astor when Augusta's legacy came back to haunt her. For as fate would have it, there was a challenger for the Mrs. Astor title.
The ghost of Augusta.
Not quite, almost though. Augusta's son, William Waldorf, was well aware of the feud between his mammy and his aunt.
He's going to be Mrs. Astor now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how he does that.
He wanted to keep the title out of the greedy hands of Caroline and have it for his wife, Mamie, to take on the role of Mrs. Astor. To Caroline, this meant war. So, Caroline devised a plan to crush her rival. Over a period of months, both sides campaigned for their own Mrs. Astor to win. Caroline was all over that city, bashing poor Mamie.
And she did literally try to crush her as well.
That's wrestling in the streets.
Yeah, that's something that is not in the history books, but she did try to drop a piano on her, a safe, and several other things. She'd already done a poisoning. She was trying to expand her repertoire of murder. She's like, I'm getting this chick on the sidewalk with a armoire out the window.
Yeah, with an anvil. But Mamie was far outmatched because she was much younger and far less connected than good old Caroline. And Caroline had spent the last decade wooing society with her extravagant parties, which gave her far more influence than Mamie. Caroline had won the prize before the contest even began, really, and walked away as the Mrs. Astor.
Poor William. I mean, he really wanted to be Mrs. Astor. Nobody gave him a chance to do that.
No one gave him a chance. But that is not the end of the story. William will retaliate and get his sweet, sweet, stunning revenge.
He retaliates by painting a large piece of glass to look like an alley, and then Caroline Astor walks into it, smashes the glass.
We'll just have to see.
Yep.
And that's where we'll pick up on the next episode of Gilded Goss. But oh, what's this? A telegram is coming in from 1899?
Washington, September 13th. Alice Knott, 23 years old, of 803 12th Street, came to her death yesterday through the instrumentality of her pet parrot, an evil-dispositioned bird who was cordially detested by everyone except his mistress, but who seemed to have a strong affection for her. He would follow her from room to room, and was never happy except in her presence. He was generally regarded as a devil, and as a bird of ill omen. His unpopularity was increased by an uncanny habit of pulling the tips off of the gas burners with his strong beak, and inhaling the gas until it stupefied him. He was a gas fiend, a feathered victim of the gas habit. While his young mistress was sleeping yesterday, the parrot took off the lava tip in her room and started on a gas debauch. This time, there was no one near to avert the consequences of his deed. When Miss Knott's relatives arrived, alarmed by her long silence, broke open the door, they found her dead. The little murderer was found half unconscious by the door. When he found himself succumbing to the gas and was not rescued as usual by his mistress, he realized something was wrong and had wit or instinct enough to make for the door and shove his bill as far under it as he could. He recovered, and while the coroner was in the house, the malignant little bird was caught trying to turn the gas on again.
Here's what I want to know. I want to know how many parrots have killed since this parrot in 1899.
There's been just thousands, and you can find out about it on oopsmyparrotkilledme.com, oopsmyparrotkilledme.org, where all the statistics about parrots getting you are.
And that's it for now, folks. Tune in next time for the surprising conclusion of the Mrs. Astor scandal, and we'll dive into a mystery that left a nation baffled.
I'm still baffled by the parrot.
Thanks for listening. We value our listeners, and we'd love to hear from you.
Oh my God, we love you.
If you have any feedback or ideas for topics, or any corrections for us, reach us at gildedgoss@gmail.com.
Actually, you can send the corrections to gildedgoss@notgonnareadit.com. No, I'm just kidding. We'll read it.
And follow us on Instagram at Gilded Goss Podcast for news, updates, and pics of the people and places we talk about. And until next time, farewell, my little cabbages.
It's time to face the corn.